out there who dream the impossible. Thank you so much, everyone.
Getting there, Lewis. 11 race wins, 2014 world champion.
There was a race against time in 2004 to get Sakhir ready for its Grand Prix debut. But today, the only race is where it matters, right on track. Welcome to the Bahrain Grand Prix. We'll be racing around 3.36 miles of the magnificent Bahrain International Circuit today. Keep an eye out for drivers locking the front left down into the tricky braking zone of turn 10. It's time to see how our drivers are stacking up after yesterday's exciting qualifying session. Lewis Hamilton lines up on pole position, and Oscar Piastri completes the front row. Looking at the rest of today's grid, we have Verstappen, Leclerc, George Russell and Tsunoda, Norris, Antonelli, Lawson and Lance Stroll, Albon, Hadjar, Carlos Sainz and Fernando Alonso, Behrman, Gasly, Esteban Ocon and Franco Colapinto, Bortoleto and Nico Hülkenberg rounds off the grid. And now it's time to head down to the track. And alongside me today, a man who I'm always pleased to see join me in the commentary box, Anthony Davidson. I know what we've got to do before the start of today's race, but what about our driver? What do the final hours look like for them?
Well, for them, you've got your pre-race rituals that you go through. You see different drivers that, some have got their headphones on, they're listening to the music. Some drivers really absorb the energy from the crowd and they're there waving to them. Other drivers, they go within themselves. They chat to their engineers, absorbing that information, that vital information that you need to carry you through the race. And, those pre-race rituals are essential to making things systematic. We do a lot of Grand Prix in a season, and the more systematic you can be, the easier you are within that environment.
Mind that front wing, it's going to need replacing if it takes too much damage. We can now use DRS. DRS now available. Brilliant, nice move, keep going. Good job, that was the fastest lap of the race so far. That was the fastest lap of the race. Keep this up. Well done. Absolutely awesome. Just amazing, mate. Well done.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much. Thanks for the coordination.
And an award-winning day for Oscar Piastri as he takes the checkered flag and wins.
It was a joy to watch today, honestly, because the driver was clearly able to read the conditions well on track, to use the information properly from the team, and usually come up with the right solution at the right time.
It's what they've all been racing towards. Podium. After an event like that, who knows what the sport has in store for us next time out? Be sure to join us once again as we continue to bring you all the excitement of Formula One. Good morning, good afternoon, or for us, good evening, as we're under the night lights of Jeddah. The floodlights are on and so is the pressure here at the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. So let's take a look at the topographical map of the Jeddah Street Circuit. As you can see, a number of challenging corners for the drivers to master here. We'll see just how much the teams have benefited from their time spent in practice this weekend. And like many street circuits, this track has the potential to punish drivers that get it wrong. Let's hope we avoid any safety cars today. Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting race. Oscar Piastri. Moving on to the rest of the grid, we have Verstappen, Leclerc, George Russell and Tsunoda, Hamilton, Norris, Hadjar and Liam Lawson, Albon, Fernando Alonso, Lance Stroll and Sainz, Gasly, Bortoleto, Franco Colapinto and Nico Hülkenberg. Behrman and Esteban Ocon lines up at the back of the... And alongside me here today in the commentary box, Anthony Davidson. Look, we know it's not where you start, it's where you finish. But let's talk about the start now. What's there to help the drivers get away well?
Big pressure at the start of the race, Crofty, for all of them up and down the grid, no matter where you are. But the drivers these days, they practice, practice and practice. They have rigs with them at the circuit where they can sit down with the actual steering wheel from the real car, and they've got lights that they react to. The clutch paddle is tailored around the driver's hands, around their fingers, so they can have optimum position before they start. So there's so much thought and effort that goes into getting these cars off the line.
DRS now enabled. DRS enabled. Use your overtake button more. It's time to utilise some of this energy. Come on. Try to stay with them. They might make a mistake and we could still regain the position. Watch out for understeer in the wake of the car ahead. Try to get past as quickly as you can. Push, push. Nice work, mate. That brings you up a place.
last little minutes. Thank you.
And it's the checkered flag for your Grand Prix race winner, Oscar Piastri.
And that's
Well, that was certainly an exciting weekend of Formula One. Be sure to join us for more exciting Formula One action very soon. So it's all about speed in today's sprint. Not very many laps and no chance to get ahead on strategy. Who here today has the raw skill to take them to the top? Sitting at the southeastern coast of Florida, the Miami International Autodrome has 19 corners and 3.36 miles of racing. It's a circuit designed to encourage close racing while meeting the highest safety standards. Either way, I'm sure it's one that will please the fans. Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting sprint. Yuki Tsunoda lines up on pole position. And it's Charles Leclerc in P2. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Verstappen, Antonelli, and Sir Lewis Hamilton, and Norris, Piastri, Russell, Albon, and Lance Stroll. And alongside me in the commentary box today, a man who I always look up to, which is easier said than done, Anthony Davidson. Well, they say that a change is as good as a rest, and whilst there's not much rest,
Okay, you have some front wing damage, but not enough to justify a stop in the remaining laps. Sorry, we can't provide you with that information right now. Okay, you have a lot of front wing damage. Box for a new one. Okay, we can take you this lap. Okay, DRS is now available. Battery charge is high, let's use that overtake button a bit more.
A few missed opportunities. Yeah, sorry.
So that wraps up the sprint race, but there's still more action yet to come this weekend. We've got qualifying and, of course, the Grand Prix. Welcome to the Miami International Autodrome, home of the Miami Grand Prix. This exciting track circumnavigates the Hard Rock Stadium, home to the National Football League outfit, the Miami Dolphins. Well, it's certainly not sunny here in the Sunshine State. A lap of the Miami Grand Prix features 19 corners and 3.36 miles of track around the Hard Rock Stadium. So with the race not far away from starting, here's what today's grid rundown looks like. Yuki Tsunoda lines up on pole position, with Charles Leclerc alongside. Considering the rest of the grid, we have Verstappen, Antonelli, and Sir Lewis Hamilton, and Norris, Piastri, Russell, Albon, and Lance. And striding into our commentary box to join us today, the man.
Okay, be careful with the front wing, you've taken some minor damage. Okay, take it easy on the car, we can't sustain this level of damage. If you think you can get past, make use of the overtake button and see what you can do. Okay, the car behind is dropping back. We're seeing a gap starting to form. Tsunoda's just set the fastest lap of the race. The Red Bull drivers just moved into first place. You're increasing the gap on the car behind by 0.5 a lap. Yes, and that's a podium. Excellent drive. The whole team have worked especially hard this weekend, and that, my friend, is a fantastic reward. Well done.
Woo! Nice. Very, very.
The checkered flag is out. The crowd roar. And with that, we wrap up another weekend of motorsport action. But with more races lined up, be sure to join us when we come back with more Formula One. You join us here in Imola as we prepare for what will undoubtedly be a magnificent day of racing. It's time, of course, for the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. One lap of Imola, anti-clockwise of course, unlike most Formula One circuits, will take our drivers round 3.1 miles of track. 19 turns, 9 right-handers and 10 to the left. Drivers will need to be precise at the hairpin at turn 7, given the subsequent uphill section. Without a good exit from that corner, they'll lose a lot of time on that stretch. Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks like for today's race. An immense lap from Lewis Hamilton yesterday puts him on pole position. And it's Charles Leclerc in P2. As we continue through the rest of the grid today, we have Verstappen, Norris, George Russell and Tsunoda, Piastri, Antonelli, Hadjar and Fernando Alonso, Lawson, Stroll, Alex Albon and Sainz, Colapinto, Hülkenberg, Gabriel Bortoleto and Esteban Ocon. Gasly and Ollie Behrman rounds off the grid. That's it then, it's time to go racing as we head down trackside for today's race. And alongside me today is a man who needs no introduction, but I'll try anyway. It's Ant Davidson. I know what we've got to do before the start of today's race, but what about our driver? What do the final hours look like for them?
Well, for them, you've got your pre-race rituals that you go through. You see different drivers that, some have got their headphones on, they're listening to the music. Some drivers really absorb the energy from the crowd and they're there waving to them. Other drivers...
Now use DRS. DRS now available. If you think you can get past, make use of the overtake button and see what you can do. Okay, you've got front wing damage. Great manoeuvre, you made it look so easy. Final lap, push, push. Yes, come on, we're on the podium. Good job this weekend. That's a great drive. Thank you.
Great job, everybody. Another double podium. Fantastic job.
Charles Leclerc, what a drive, what a victory. He wins. Well, what an end to another fantastic weekend of racing. Thanks to everyone who joined us, and we'll see you for the next one. You can feel the tension in the air as we move into race day here in Monaco. It's a track that requires the full concentration of the drivers with zero margin for error. It tests their skills to the absolute limits, so no wonder it remains a fan favourite. The prestigious Circuit de Monaco, then, is not... And alongside me today...
Okay, mate, don't worry about the damage. I've got some new strategy options if you go and check your MFD. Confirmed. DRS now enabled. DRS enabled.
Here's the checkered flag. Here's our winner. By George, he's done it. Russell wins.
A great display of dominance today, Crofty, by this driver. They led from lights out to the flag at the end, led every lap of the race. Brilliant stuff by them, and excited to see what more they can do in future races.
It's time for our podium celebrations. And as ever in Formula One, 3 is the magic number. By George. It's been an absolutely wild weekend of Formula One action, and I can't wait to see what's next. Well, it's a pleasure to have you join us here at the Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya as we proceed through to race day to see just who will claim victory at the Spanish Grand Prix. It's an updated track at Catalunya, and we welcome the removal of the chicane in the final sector, shortening lap times and reducing the total running to 2.9 miles and 14 turns. This was actually the original setup for the track, but it hasn't been used since 2007. It's time to take a look at our starting grid for today's race. Lando Norris will lead us away from pole position, and Andrea Kimi Antonelli completes the front row. Looking at the rest of today's grid, we have Piastri, Leclerc, Max Verstappen, and Russell. Hamilton, Tsunoda, and alongside
Okay, DRS is now available. Let's use overtake and burn off some of this energy. Okay mate, final lap. Keep your concentration and let's bring it home. Yes, mate, I'll take that. Well done. We're really happy with the podium down here, so well done. Yes.
Wow, thanks, guys. That was probably the hardest race I've ever had in my life, so yeah. Thank you very much.
And here he comes. It's all go, go, go for Lando Norris as he takes the checkered flag and wins.
And they led every single lap of the race. It was a light to flag victory, and that is total dominance.
There's room for 3 on their podium, but only ever 1 right at the top. Let the celebrations begin. He holds the trophy aloft, and why shouldn't he? A richly deserved. After an event like that, who knows what the sport has in store for us next time out? Be sure to join us once again as we continue to bring you all the excitement of Formula One. Welcome back to the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, where Stroll, Latifi and Villeneuve, both Jacques and Gilles, are the 4 Canadian point scorers in the past. Who's going to come out on top today at this favourite of the F1 calendar? It's the Canadian Grand Prix. If you want flat-out racing, you've come to the right place this weekend, as it's full throttle for 59% of this 2.7-mile circuit, peaking at around 210 miles per hour going into the final chicane. But that speed requires discipline, and there are more than a few close walls here just waiting to punish drivers with a heavy right foot. Before we begin, let's take a quick look at the grid lineup for today's race. Oscar Piastri lines up on pole position, just ahead of George Russell, who starts this event from P2. Moving on to the rest of the grid, we have Leclerc, Tsunoda, Max Verstappen and Hamilton, Antonelli, Norris, Sainz and Lance Stroll, Albon. And with me for this commentary this afternoon, former racing driver Naomi Schiff. Oh, Canada. Oh, Canada, what a track this is, and what a challenge for the drivers this weekend. Long straights, heavy braking zones, and a very green surface to start with.
This happens to be one of the drivers' favourites. It is a low downforce circuit that is fast and flowing, but it is also demanding on the brakes. And be careful, because let's not forget the wall of champions that catches out so many.
can now use DRS. DRS now available. That was the fastest lap of the race. Keep this up. Well done. We've got a lot of spare energy. Okay to use your overtake button. Great work, that's a new fastest lap of the race. Okay mate, this is the final lap of the race, final lap. Absolutely awesome. Just amazing, mate. Well done.
Thanks, everyone.
Oscar Piastri, take a bow. What a performance. Well, that was certainly an exciting weekend of Formula One. Be sure to join us for more exciting Formula One action very soon. The hills are alive with the sound of engines. It's race day here at the Austrian Grand Prix. The Spielberg circuit then is situated 700 metres above sea level, with just 10 corners making up one of the shortest laps of the season. One time around here is a distance of around 2.6 miles, with the best overtaking chances into turn 1 or the tight uphill of turn 3. It's time to see how our drivers are stacking up after yesterday's exciting qualifying session. Lewis Hamilton lines up on pole position, with Charles Leclerc alongside. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Verstappen, Antonelli, George Russell and Piastri, Norris, Tsunoda, Lawson and Alex Albon, Sainz, Stroll. And alongside me today, former Formula One driver and former world champion too. See, told you I'll give you a big intro. Anthony Davidson, hello. So much to talk about on what is such a short lap. It's the fastest lap times of the season, but that doesn't mean it's not a challenge.
It's a real challenge to get right, this circuit. Lots of tight corners linked up with very long straights. You've got 3 DRS zones as well. That means that the racing is often very close, and you can hang on to potentially a faster car if you can stay within that 1 second buffer. But you've then got some higher speed corners like turn 6 and 7 in the middle of the track, and then the 2 final corners as well. Track limits. Yep, there we go. I mentioned it. Be careful.
That move was illegal, I'm afraid, mate. Return the position, give it back. Right, you've been pushing your luck on track limits too much, and we've been given a 3-second penalty. DRS now enabled. DRS enabled. Okay, you have some front wing damage, but not enough to justify a stop in the remaining laps. Nice work, mate. That brings you up a place. Okay, gap to the car in front, 2.4 seconds. Okay, you've just started the final lap of the race, final lap. Okay, pick up rubber and bring it home.
Nailed the tricky stuff and up the less tricky stuff, so thank you.
And Leclerc to the line, to the checkered flag. It's King Charles today. And with that, we wrap up another weekend of motor. Lined up, be sure to join us when we come back with more Formula One. As the drivers begin to climb into their cars down on the grid, the excitement is really building at this magnificent circuit. We're just about ready to go racing for today's Formula One Grand Prix. The 3.6-mile-long Silverstone circuit is one of the longest of the season, with 18 corners in the current layout. With average lap speeds reaching around 145 miles per hour, it's also one of the quickest tracks of the year. Watch out for cars taking the right-handers of Abbey and of Copse flat out. Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting race. A fantastic effort from Charles Leclerc yesterday, and it's put him on pole. And starting next to them is George Russell. Considering the rest of the grid, we have Verstappen, Tsunoda, Oscar Piastri, and Norris. Hamilton, Antonelli, Lawson, and Lance Stroll. Sainz, Fernando Alonso, Isaac Hadjar, and Albon. Hülkenberg, Ocon, Pierre Gasly, and Gabriel Bortoleto. Colapinto, and Ollie Behrman rounds off the grid. It's almost time for the lights to go out, so let's head down to the track where preparations are underway. And alongside me, a man, well, what more can I say? But he's a legend, Anthony.
OK, DRS is now available. battery charge is high. Let's use that overtake button a bit more. Good job, that was the fastest lap of the race so far. Okay, so we're leading our teammate by 1.6 seconds. Okay, this is your final lap of the race. Yes, and that's a podium. Excellent drive. The whole team have worked especially hard this weekend, and that, my friend, is a fantastic reward. Well done.
Woo. Well done, everyone. Thank you.
Charles Leclerc, what a drive, what a victory. He wins.
And it's always...
Well, what an end to another fantastic weekend of racing. Thanks to everyone who joined us, and we'll see you for the next one. Welcome to today's sprint. This is shaping up to be another fantastic weekend. Spa-Francorchamps today, a circuit that spans 4.35 miles. There are tons of elevation changes along the way too. 19 corners making up this circuit, with 9 of those to the right and the remaining 10 to the left. This track's a great one for fans of pure speed, and the average lap speed comes close to a whopping 145 miles per hour. Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks for today's sprint. Andrea Kimi Antonelli lines up on pole position, and it's Charles Leclerc in P2. As we continue through the rest of the grid today, we have Verstappen, Piastri, Lando Norris, and Hamilton, Russell, Tsunoda, Lawson, and Carlos Sainz, Albon, Stroll, Fernando Alonso, and Hadjar, Bortoleto, Ocon, Pierre Gasly, and Franco Colapinto. Behrman and Nico Hülkenberg rounds off the grid. Which of these drivers will get pole position today? We'll soon find out. Well, it's been a long time.
Can now use DRS. DRS now available. use your overtake button more. It's time to utilise some of this energy. Come on. Keep on him, he might make a mistake. Okay, final lap, let's go, final lap. Yes, yes, come on, we're on the podium. Good job this weekend. That's a great drive, thank you.
Sprint winners. That's pretty cool.
Well, that's an end to the sprint action. Next up, we'll set the grid for the Grand Prix. So we'll see you next time.